Redditors who were dating someone that went from, I think I want to marry this person, to, I think I need a restraining order. What happened? Hey guys, welcome back to the internet. We got some more relationship stories. Hopefully I'm not in any of these. So we were actually engaged to be married. Then she went on holidays without me and came back pregnant. She then told me, "You have never done anything to prove that you really love me. Accept this baby and help me raise it to prove it." I declined and asked her to leave the home that I paid for, and that was in my name. She refused, so I made arrangements, canceled my lease, then left and told her there were 4 days left on the lease. She wailed, "But what am I supposed to do? I don't have a job." Man, you just know that this girl was thinking up this excuse while she was flying home from her vacation. Man, some people think they can just get away with anything. So after being beat down mentally from her, I started suffering from erectile dysfunction at 22 years of age. Eventually I mustered the courage to leave her. She quickly moved on to someone else, who would later become her husband, and called me every week to basically rub it in, saying how much better he was than me, how much bigger he was than me, etc. I moved out of state, changed my number, never heard from her again. She called my parents and even showed up at their home, but they told her to go away. About 10 years later, my friend ran into an old friend of hers. Apparently my ex got arrested for beating her own mother, got out of jail, and beat her husband, then tried to take her kids from him. She was arrested again and later released. Guess I dodged a bullet there. You know, I've said it before and I'll probably say it plenty of times in this video, but how did you end up with this person in the first place? I feel like there's a lot of people who put on like this mask to try and make themselves look so much more pleasant and so much more beautiful when they first meet somebody and get into like the flirty phase. And then once they've got you locked down and you've been with them for a while, then that mask starts to peel off and then you see who they really are. So I graduated. She wanted to transfer schools, so we moved to a college town where she told me she'd been accepted as a transfer. Turns out she hadn't been accepted, and when she applied, was not accepted. She got a job at Walmart while trying to figure out her next move. After about 2 months, she decided we should move to Pittsburgh. She's convinced this will solve all her problems and make her happy. Except we're in a recession, and I just got my first good job. I don't want to move. She became abusive, I didn't want to go home. She was constantly negative and on the edge of a screaming fight. I was just avoiding her at the end. We were together 4 years before that, and she was always moody, but not abusive. 6 months of that, and she went to her hometown to take a semester at a local school and stay with her parents. I called her 2 weeks later and told her not to come back. It had been like a weight was lifted from me, and I never wanted to see her again. You guys like the cat up there? I usually just put her up there because it keeps her occupied for a long time and then I don't have to bother with her for a while. So we met online. We both had video games in common and hit it off. Fast forward 2 years and we get engaged. All was well, until he started getting abusive towards me and our pets. I felt stuck because I couldn't afford to live on my own. Then he went on a business trip and I found cheese pizza on a hidden flash drive. Turned it in, he got arrested. Turns out he was also hiring prostitutes and stuff. He's in prison, and it's illegal for him to contact me. Well, I mean, that's one way to end a relationship. You know, with me reading all of these, part of me feels like these are stories that people have sent me, and I'm like trying to give them advice or like, you know, talk to them about it. Yeah, sometimes I forget. I'm just here to enjoy the fact that some people have had it much worse than I have. So I was young, dumb, and thought I was in love, and ignored many red flags. As he got more comfortable around me, he let his crazy out. Someone stole his cell phone, and he asked me to purchase a shotgun for him so he could shoot the person who did it. It took me 1.5 years to leave. I did try breaking up with him, but he told me that if I ever tried to break up with him again, he'd kill everyone I love and then himself, so I'd know what it was like to be alone. That relationship ended in an order of protection against domestic violence. He was nuts. Well, looks like you called him on his bluff. People who threaten stuff like that over breakups are pretty trashy humans. So we were in a long-distance relationship for over 3 years, and eventually it started to fizzle. She'd tell me to move to the States and drop my college degree, my family, and my animals to live as an illegal immigrant, and I could just do whatever odd jobs I can find just to be with her. I told her I needed to wait. She'd get very upset every time I went out with friends, and would bombard my Facebook wall with random crap and send me private messages with passive-aggressive insults and threats of suicide. I broke it off with her and moved on, but she kept messaging me asking to be friends. I tried, but she'd randomly blow up at me, insulting me for ruining her life by making her think she could be loved. I told her she did deserve love, and she'd get even more upset. We couldn't talk at all. Last year, she messaged me yet again. We broke up in 2013, telling me that I had legal obligations to marry her since I said I would 5 years ago, and therefore she expected me to just fly up there and fulfill my obligation to her. Had to block her. Yeah man, breakups can bring out the worst in some people. Sometimes people are just a ticking time bomb. So I was dating a guy who was very sweet in the beginning. After about 6 months, he got possessive. He didn't trust me. An example of this was one night I told him I was meeting a friend I used to work with at a bar a block away. We lived in a safe area and it was a short walk. Her name sounded like it could be male or female, but I assured him that she was a she. He showed up at the bar while we were there and it made him look very insecure. He began tracking my phone's GPS. I found out when I stopped at a relative's house after work on my way home and he freaked out and called my mom. She actually knew that was where I was and he had a hard time believing I wasn't cheating. The last straw was my first week at a new job. I worked nights and had my phone. I got this long-winded email regarding an innocent comment on a Facebook selfie of me. There was a screenshot of it and a huge manifesto about why my buddies online all wanted to take me away from him. After I broke up with him, I got emails for months, swinging between apologies and telling me I was the abuser. I got emails telling me he was being drugged. It was insane. Well, like I said, a lot of people might seem nice at first, but you need to spend a lot of time with them before you really know. That's why I think it's crazy when people want to get married after knowing somebody for like just a few weeks. I started dating in high school, had some ups and downs, but at the time I just chalked it up to being immature. My last 2 years of college really proved he just had serious issues. When I moved out of state, it's like a switch flipped, and he got extremely possessive and controlling. He wanted all my friends' numbers, gave me a schedule of when we need to be in communication, and if I missed any, he was blowing up my phone with threats of suicide. Finally got the restraining order when he showed up to my friend's apartment looking for me, threatening to call the police because I still had a pair of his shoes that I didn't even have. Yeah, I really don't know how long-distance relationships ever stay together. So the worst version I have of this was a guy I'd been dating, who rammed my truck with a moving van, repeatedly, at an immigration checkpoint in New Mexico, well after dark. He thought it was funny. He'd been behaving badly, but I just thought it was the stress of the move. The aggravated assault by the U-Haul is when I decided to break up with him. He stalked me for years after that, harassing me at work, which led to me getting fired. I switched from law firms to legal software, and that seemed to make it harder to find me. His stalking ended in blowing up a brick-and-mortar mailbox with plastic explosives. I think he had laid low after that, because the FBI was looking for him. He eventually moved back to California years later. An ex-girlfriend of his contacted me about 7 years later when she was settling his estate. She wanted to make sure there weren't any children. Man, when you're dealing with someone this crazy, I think that you should just fight back. Maybe just kill the person. Now we got a long one. So I was 15, really dumb because I'd never been in a serious relationship before and had no idea what I was doing. This was my first love, so of course I was convinced I was going to marry him. He was 18 and a total piece of garbage. He told me he loved me, that we were going to be together forever, and sold me on the idea of a perfect life. I wanted to be grown so bad that I jumped at my chance to feel like an adult. The crazy thing is, there's not a singular event or thing he did to trigger a grandiose, get the F away from me moment. He was crappy from the beginning. Our first date, as a couple, was homecoming. He was actually taking another girl to homecoming as a friend, but the week of, he told me he canceled on her so he could go as my date. Instead of seeing this as the red flag it was, 15-year-old me thought it was some grandiose romantic gesture. It was only downhill from there. He expected me to be on the phone with him constantly when I wasn't at school. I would get home from school and he would expect me to call. If I took too long to do it, he would yell at me. We would stay on the phone until I literally fell asleep. On the weekends, I was expected to call him as soon as I woke up. If I slept in too late, he would yell at me. What were we talking about? Literally nothing. He would expect me to stay on the phone with him, sitting in silence for hours, and get mad if I said I wanted to go. Half the time he would get mad at me anyway for not having anything to say. Never mind the fact that he didn't have anything to say either. Anytime I told him I would be out of town for a weekend for a family or optional school trip, he would get angry at me. It took at minimum an hour to get him to tell me what the deal was. Every time, he would tell me he had this amazing weekend planned, and we were going to go out and do all these fun things. Never mind the fact that he'd never had any plans for any of the weekends I was in town. He did get physical on a couple of occasions, but dumb teenager me just thought it was because he was so passionate. I kinda realized I was in over my head when he started pressuring me to have sex. I didn't want to, but he did. And he talked about all these plans about going to a hotel room and how amazing it was going to be. It made me super uncomfortable, but after a while I just started going along with making the plans because I knew it meant we would move past the subject faster. I'm not sure what happened. I was talking with my mom one day and something just snapped. It was like 1 minute I was head over heels with this guy and the next I was repulsed by the very idea of him. My mom made and executed a plan beyond what I could have handled myself. I ended it over the phone because I was scared of how he would react in person. My mom contacted his parents and told them what was going on. She contacted the school to make sure I had support there too. I made it clear to him in no uncertain terms that he shouldn't talk to me or come around me at all. He drove by my house frequently for a couple of days. My mom called me out for school for a week. He would sit outside on the street for an hour or two at a time. Even our neighbors got involved in helping us. They would warn us if he was outside or let us know if he came by when we were out. It got kinda bad and I went to stay with my dad for a few days. He came by and left a card and stuffed a bear on the porch at my mom's on Valentine's Day. Eventually, he just stopped, but I spent a lot of time scared out of my mind not knowing if or when he was going to pop up, even after he stopped coming around. I still have no idea why he stopped, but I won't forget that kind of fear. Wow, sounds like you ran into every single red flag a person could have. Well, at least you got all these lessons out of the way while you're young. So we were spending a large amount of time together, with me staying at his house several nights of the week. He went mad one day because he said we weren't spending enough time together. He pulled out a notepad and drew up a schedule, outlining in excruciating detail each hour that I would spend with him throughout the week from then on. I distinctly remember sitting there, saying nothing, and feeling like I was in the Twilight Zone. Things got significantly crazier from then on, but this moment always sticks out in my mind. Man, I think that people who have the biggest problem with this are people who just can't enjoy themselves when they're on their own. Because when you're so dependent on spending every waking hour with somebody, it probably means you're a pretty boring person on your own. Like, even if I have somebody that I spend lots of time with and I'm pretty close with, after like a day or two, I'm just like, alright, can you just leave me alone for a couple days now? I need to catch back up on my hobbies. Alright, I'll throw my hat into the ring here. I dated a chick years ago. She was essentially everything I thought I wanted in a girl. She was cute, funny, liked just enough things I liked for us to have common interests, but just different enough to show each other new things and experiences I was heavy into her and she was heavy into. Then things got weird. She started getting jealous of high school friends I'd known way before her, and even went as far as telling me I wasn't allowed to hang out with some of my female friends, except for the few she thought were uglier than her. Things got worse. She started getting jealous of inanimate objects like my game consoles and video games, some of which she gave me. It came to a head when my grandmother asked me to watch her dog. She was a tiny hand dog that I adored, and one day I was half asleep and saw her literally kick the tiny dog off the bed, like with her feet. I asked her what the heck her problem was, and she told me that she doesn't like that I give the dog more attention than her. Things got even worse. She would physically abuse me when I did things she didn't like, such as bending my fingers, hitting me in the face, etc. Eventually, everything I did she didn't like. After a while, I got the courage to dump her, and she tried to tell me that she's pregnant to keep me, which is an obvious lie. After that, I discovered she'd still been stalking my Facebook page, and told some of her friends and mutual friends that I was the abuser. I also learned that when I was away, she'd let dudes feel her up and other stuff too. Luckily, I've landed a great girl who cares about me and isn't a jealous psycho like she was. Well, I guess that's one benefit to being single. I can do whatever I want with all the time in the world. I dated someone for almost 3 years back in grade 10 in high school. Everything was great for the first year or so, and he treated me well, and we had some things in common. Didn't realize after we broke up how much of a grade A neckbeard he actually was. Thought for a while that if we stayed together after high school, we could get married. Because he was my first relationship, and I felt like I loved him so much that I would marry him. Then, about a year and a half into the relationship, he starts to show his true colors. His family never had much money, so sometimes I would help to pay for stuff for him. He started to yell and scream if I didn't give him money to buy some game or food he wanted, and many times would embarrass me in the middle of a public setting like Walmart. My parents sometimes too would help pay for his gas, and that got to the point where he would come to me to ask my parents for the money because they didn't give it to him yet. I didn't want to give him money all the time, and even tried calling him out on it. But he would always scream and yell, saying, "How dare I tell him not to take my money, blah blah blah." He generally became emotionally and financially abusive. I didn't know financial abuse was a thing until after we broke up. And the incident that made me really stop loving him was the night that he took advantage of me. He finally decided that waiting for me to be ready wasn't enough, so he took it. We still dated almost a year after that, but out of fear of what he would do if I left him. I finally left him the next year right before my birthday after finding out that he had cheated on me with my now ex-best friend. I wish I had said something sooner to my parents, but only told them 3 to 4 years after it happened. Now I hope I never see him again. I'm just gonna tell everybody right now, if you're in an abusive relationship, just leave it. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't give them any more chances. Just punch them in the face and leave. And if you have a cat that just bosses you around and walks in front of your camera when you're trying to record, then sometimes you might just have to throw her outside and give her a break. Oh, you stink. So I started dating not long after a previous relationship. At first everything was amazing, and I did everything for this girl. For my 21st birthday, we went to Alton Towers with 2 of my friends. 1 boy and 1 girl. We stayed over at the hotel. We were all in the same room having a drink and laughing, when suddenly my girlfriend storms out of the room for no reason. Rightly so, I followed her back to our room as to ask what's up. Before I can even finish my sentence, she punches me square in the face, gets me to the floor, and kicks me about 5 or 6 times. I ask why, and it's because I'm apparently always looking at my female friend. Anyway, in the morning we set off home, and I assume all is well. We drop my friends off, and as I pull to her house, she puts her feet on my widescreen and kicks it 3 or 4 times, cracking it. Not sure why I stayed with her for a month after this, as she scratched at my face repeatedly when I accepted an old school friend on Facebook. You know, when I just barely said punch them in the face, I was not expecting that to show up in the next story. But we still got a few more. This is going to be a long video to make up for all these short ones I've had lately. So I was dating a guy. I really liked him. He was smart, funny, and adventurous. We were getting pretty serious. He pretty much lived at my house. One weekend I went home for my dad's birthday. All of my brothers were home. I have 5 of them. We ate and drank and were merry. One of my sister-in-laws took some pictures and posted them on Facebook with me tagged in them. I got back to my house Sunday evening, and my boyfriend was coming over shortly to hang out and spend the night. When he got there, he was basically frothing out the mouth. He shoved me and called me a whore, started pushing me around, ranting about how he had seen me whoring myself all over the internet and banging a bunch of guys. I told him that they were my brothers, but at this point I was done with him. I told him to get the F out of my house. He took that as an invitation to throw me up against the wall and try to force me to kiss him. My roomie heard the commotion and came out of the room with a bat. Then Poophead made the only good decision he made that day and decided to leave. Kicked in a pantry door and wrecked some drywall on his way out though. I threw all his stuff in a dumpster. He ended up stalking me for years, showing up drunk at places I'd moved after we dated, calling after I'd changed my number, even texted me on the week of my wedding to ask me to reconsider marrying him instead. Yeah, you crazy F, I want to dump the love of my life for a crazy stalker. I always think it's crazy when people have made things so bad for themselves, you know, they become very abusive, they started many fights, and then they still expect that they're just going to turn everything back around and everyone's going to be happy again. How can you ever expect to go back to having a good time with this person after how much tension you've brought up? So I started dating a woman who agreed with me on the idea of being childless. I was 100% certain, and still am almost 25 years later, that I did not and do not want children. We commenced dating. 2 months into dating, she told me that I had to quit my job that paid very well and get an even higher paying job immediately, if not sooner. 2, that I had to purchase her a large house in Connecticut. At the time she was living in Queens, New York, and I was living in southern Westchester County. And finally, number 3, I had to get her pregnant immediately with the first of 10, yes, 10 children she wanted by me. And no, she was not kidding at all. I think I invented ghosting at that moment. It was, after all, 1994. How hard did I ghost her? I moved from New York to Arizona overnight. I vanished. We're Facebook friends now, though. That's a bit of a strange thing to just immediately change your mind on. Going from, oh, I don't want any kids, to, we need to have 10 kids right now. Man, this has been a pretty kooky video. She punched me in the face while I was sleeping. Apparently my phone had woken her when I received a text in the middle of the night from a girl asking if there was any chance I could come pick her up. She assumed I was cheating and figured that the most efficient way of addressing her concerns was just to punch me in the face. Hard. While I lay there sleeping. The text was from a non-Alabamian cousin who had some sort of semi-emergency and needed to get picked up from a party. Oh, I'm glad he cleared up that it wasn't a cousin from Alabama. But man, why would you just punch someone in the face while they sleep? So I had an ex who went out of town for a weekend, and when she got back, she came over to my apartment when I wasn't there, and she found a bra that wasn't hers. When I came home, my place was completely trashed. Thousands of dollars worth of damage. And since I was in my early 20s, this easily amounted to my entire life's work up to that point. We're talking TV, stereo, instruments, Sega Genesis, and SNES. This was the mid-90s. And clothes. When I rightfully asked, what the F? She accused me of cheating and having another woman over during the weekend she was out of town. I denied this, and she presented her evidence and triumphantly waved a bra in my face. She seemed to really enjoy her aha moment. Hey, remember a couple weeks ago when you told me you were going out of town for the weekend and that I should invite my kid sister to come over and take her out to that stupid underage club up the street? Yeah, I did that, and she left her bra here when she changed. She called me about it yesterday, you friggin' psycho. I've never seen an inflated sense of self-deflate so quickly in real life like that. And I came to a harsh realization when I kicked her crazy butt to the curb. It's almost as hard explaining to your friends why you're breaking up with a super hot chick who is out of your league as it is explaining it to her. None of my buddies could accept that I didn't want to spend time with a crazy person who basically ruined my life in one 2-hour fit of uncontrollable anger. She literally destroyed everything I own except for a few dishes in the cupboard. Even my food was messed up. My food. Yeah, but she was so friggin' hot. And the worst part, after we broke up, I found out she was cheating on me with random dudes all the freaking time. Come on guys, there are plenty of hotties out there, not all of them are worth being with. Alright, finally we're on our last story. So she was unreasonably hot. I feel I'm good looking, but she was just stupid beautiful. She found out my ex's name somehow, without my knowledge, found her Facebook and started sending her threatening messages. I have no idea why. She then deleted every female number from my phone. All of my relatives except my mother and aunts that were listed as such. Her hotness made me continue with her for another 3 weeks after this. She said that she had issues, but being pretty means that most guys put up with it, and I need to just deal with it. Ending it with her felt more like trying to explain complex mathematics to a donkey. She wouldn't accept it for ages. I respected her self-awareness about how psycho she was, though, to be honest. She made it clear what I was signing up for. I just didn't want to listen. Well, that was quite the ride, this video. At this point, I'm pretty much just accepting that I just get demonetized like every video. I've kind of just stopped caring, because I don't even get enough views anymore to even make it worth anything. I'm currently working on a couple of other projects on YouTube, so this isn't really my #1 priority anymore. But yeah, that's all for today, so thanks for watching. Say goodbye. I had to take off her collar because it was getting too loud. This is our new collar. So remember a week ago when I said that she went out for like all night and she came back, her nose was all scratched up and her collar was missing? Well, she's been sleeping for almost a week straight, and I had to buy her a new collar.